Dev sat on a chair, lost in thought about the last several weeks. The schism, otherwise known as the hole in the air by the media, pulsed menacingly, hanging beyond reason, a few inches off the ground. It had been a few weeks and the scientific team busily scurried about trying to get as much information about the schism as possible. Things were, at the beginning, progressing at a deliberate pace, but when people began to get superpowers, everything changed. The scientific team had tripled in size and would often be in each other's way. Despite the extra minds on the scene, her expertise, along with Dr. Walker's, would be the one that would solve this puzzle. While she was considering all of this, a voice from behind broke her out of her reverie.
Dr. Singh, would you like to take a look at these readings?
Fascinating. And these are similar to the readings that you got before the breach happened?
Yes, obviously with the breach in place, the readings are much stronger. Although it is a little frightful as to what might happen, I've learned so much. Amazing. Simply amazing.
Probably without realizing it, Dr. Walker had walked away without finishing the conversation. Dev was probably the only person he could talk to about this. But even as bright as she was, and though she could hold her own in a conversation about the subatomic vibrations, his intuition and brilliance in the field was breathtaking. Yes, if the problem was going to be solved, it would be her or Dr. Walker that would be at the forefront of it. The older scientist was a professor at MIT and the foremost expert in dimensional space, warp fields, and other seemingly impossible fields of study. He was here to study the schism specifically. He had warned the scientific community about this specific spot. He didn't know what was going to happen, only that there were readings that he had taken which had suggested something like this might occur. This obviously put him as the leader of this group. This didn't bother Dev. She was here about the effects of the schism and the strange crystals, for a lack of a better term, that were strewn about the scene. Well, that and the XJ-27. As soon as she thought about it, she tuned into the large metal exoskeleton as it walked towards the schism to gather more of the crystals. Social media had called the crystals Jetfire. Dev shrugged at the thought, not really caring what it was called, only what it is. The XJ-27, however, was created by her own hands. She had always had a knack for robotics, and this proved very useful in studying the schism. The suit had limits though. Power cords ran out the back, connecting it to a fission reactor that powered it. She was hoping to be able to take the suit into the schism, but more study was needed before anyone rushed foolishly into the rift. They had sent drones through it that studied what it was like on the other side. They often came back with odd findings. It was definitely another Earth-like realm, but the creatures that encountered it, well, could be best described as monsters from a child's fantasy role-playing game. The rift could not be seen from the other side, which was probably why nothing had come through yet. Dev then absent-mindedly picked up a piece of Jetfire. It pulsed seemingly random, but there was a pattern. She just couldn't figure it out. Yet. A loud crash shook her slightly as somebody tripped over something close by, but that wasn't what caught her attention. The crystal pulsed almost immediately in time with the crash. Was it that simple? She brought the crystal closer to her and said a short, quick, "Hey." The crystal pulsed along with her voice. It had been so chaotic and noisy she hadn't even noticed the correlation. Dev walked swiftly into the mobile lab on site. Once she arrived, she hooked up the crystal to the power meter. As it had done before, the equipment was reading the crystal's power. But this time, she found an emergency signal and fired it off right next to the crystal. Everyone in the area stopped and looked at what she was doing. Right on cue, the crystal lit up brightly and the meter flickered the information of what happened inside the crystal. She stared at the readings for a second. That couldn't be right. Was she remembering her acoustic physics incorrectly? She confirmed the readings she already knew. The crystal had actually gained more power than had been put in, which should have been impossible. But after a few more experiments, her suspicions proved to be correct. What an amazing power source. Imagine all these things. She stopped and thought, turned her head slightly towards the XJ-27, and smiled.